Meet Kenith. He runs a flower shop on a very busy street. Business is good, but he'd like to do better. Kenith is smart. He notices that the business is really good on certain days like Valentine's Day. In fact, the business soars on certain holidays that demand outpaces supply. To get ahead of the problem, Kenith decided to increase his inventory. He asked his supplier to increase his daily inventory by 20%, hoping customers would come, but they don't. Lying there unsold, Ken's flowers withered away. Kenith took a hit in the next week. Kenith wondered, how do I accurately predict my future sales? Seeking better control over his inventory and sales, Kenith hired the services of a professional firm. The financial modelers analyzed Kenith's historical data, his sales receipts and balance sheets from the last 2 years. They did what-if analysis to account for various scenarios and events. They then built a predictive model that would take the guesswork out and help make better decisions based on forecasts and assumptions. A financial model is a mathematical model designed to represent a simplified version of performance of a financial asset or portfolio of a business, project, or any other investment. Based on the models, Kenith was accurately able to predict the demand and stock his inventory accordingly. Sales were up by a whopping 20%. Numbers at the heart of business decisions, and financial models help owners like Ken make better decisions.
It's not unusual to hear a company's management speak about forecasts. Our sales did not meet the forecasted numbers, or we feel confident in the forecasted economic growth and expect to exceed our targets. The management needs to have a periodic analysis of the performance of the company. Suppliers need to know the future demand for products, whereas investors are interested in the profits and future potential of the company. This is when forecasting comes into picture. As Paul Sofo said, the goal of forecasting is not to predict the future, but to tell you what you need to know to take meaningful actions in the present. Forecasting is based on the past and present data, which helps in analysis of existing trends and form the cornerstone of good decision making. Used properly, forecasting allows businesses to plan ahead of their needs, raising their chances of keeping healthy through all markets. That's one function of business forecasting that all investors can appreciate. There is a lot of variation on a practical level when it comes to forecasting. However, on a conceptual level, all forecasts follow the same process. 1. A problem or data point is chosen. This can be something like, will people buy a high-end coffee maker? Or what will our sales be in March next year? Secondly, theoretical variables and an ideal data set are chosen. This is where the forecaster identifies the relevant variables that need to be considered and decides how to collect the data. Third is assumption time. To cut down the time and data needed to make a forecast, the forecaster makes some explicit assumptions to simplify the process. Next, a model is chosen. The forecaster picks the model that fits the data set, selected variables and assumptions. And next is the analysis piece. Using the model, the data is analyzed and a forecast is made from the analysis. Lastly, verification. The forecaster compares the forecast to what actually happens to tweak the process, identify problems, or in the rare case of an absolutely accurate forecast, pat himself on the back. In the end, all financial forecasts, whether about the specifics of a business like sales growth or predictions about the economy, are informed guesses. In this session, we look at some of the methods behind financial forecasts as well as the actual process and some of the risks that crop up when we seek to predict the future. The most reliable way to forecast the future is to understand the present. Let's begin learning. In this session, you will learn about forecasting basics, methods of forecasting, which include subjective and objective forecasting. Next, we will look at theoretical approaches to forecasting, which includes the Delphi technique, scenario drafting, subjective approach, and time series forecasting. And finally, we delve into the practical approaches to forecasting. These include extrapolation, proportion analysis, top-down approach, and the bottom-up approach. As you all know, in order to set up projected financial statements, you need to project or forecast a lot of variables. But what is forecasting? Forecasting is nothing but a means of using historical data to arrive at a reasonable expectation of future performance, trends, and outcomes. But as we all know, the future is uncertain and no amount of estimation or analysis can accurately predict future outcomes with complete certainty. Forecasting assumes all the more importance in financial analysis since it can help prepare for various unknown as well as possible or probable future events. This ensures that the key data points required can be estimated with some degree of confidence and minimize the margin of error. Forecasting methods can either be subjective, using more intuitive or qualitative approaches, or objective, that is, using quantitative approaches supported by empirical evidence. Let's look at each of them in detail. The choice of method depends on what data is available and the time period for which a forecast is desired. Subjective forecasting relies on judgments, opinions, intuition, emotions, or personal experiences rather than any computations or logical derivations. It is appropriate when past data is not available and is usually applied to intermediate or long-range decisions. On the other hand, objective forecasting is based on quantitative models backed by arithmetical calculations and logical basis. Therefore, it is objective or tangible in nature. It relies heavily on mathematical computations and is appropriate when past numerical data is available and when it is reasonable to assume that some of the patterns in the data are expected to continue into the future. Finally, this method is usually applied to short or intermediate range decisions. As indicated earlier, forecasting approaches will typically be more objective for nearer term forecasting horizons and for events where there is plenty of quantitative data available. More distant time periods or events with a lack of historical quantitative data will often call for more subjective approaches. In a practical scenario, considering an overall context, some items for which requisite data is available may be forecast on objective basis and others on subjective basis, thereby using a combination approach. There are two main types of approaches to forecasting: theoretical approaches and practical approaches to forecasting. There are four theoretical approaches to forecasting. They include the Delphi technique, scenario drafting, subjective approach, and time series forecasting. The first theoretical approach that we are about to discuss is the Delphi technique. The Delphi method is a structured communication technique or method originally developed as a systematic interactive forecasting method which relies on a panel of experts. The experts respond to a series of questionnaires in isolation. The results are compiled and circulated, and a second questionnaire follows a similar approach. After each round, an anonymized summary of the experts' forecasts from the round, as well as the reasons they provided for their judgments, is gathered and discussed. In this manner, experts are encouraged to revise their earlier answers in light of the replies of other members of their panel. It is believed that during this process, the range of the answers will decrease and the group will converge towards the correct answer. Finally, the process is stopped after a predefined stop criterion, example number of rounds, achievement of consensus, and stability of results, and the mean or median scores of the final rounds determine the results. The Delphi technique is based on the principle that forecasts or decisions from a structured group of individuals are more accurate than those from unstructured groups. The next approach is scenario drafting. Scenario drafting involves predicting various outcomes for a given situation and set of criteria or drivers. The evaluation is based on materiality, impact, and degree of uncertainty. Accordingly, different sets of forecasts are estimated. The scenario perceived as most likely is designated as a realistic or base case, and other scenarios are built around this. This could include a best or worst case or an optimistic or pessimistic case, for instance. This approach is extensively used when building business plans and models. We always try to set up flexibilities in business plans and models so that various scenarios can be evaluated. Scenarios are nothing but a group of assumptions that are likely to change together to impact outcomes. Next, we come to the subjective approach. This is entirely based on gut feel or instinct of the forecasters, which may at best be an educated guess. It is usually adopted in the case of paucity of time or for very high level analysis. It may involve brainstorming sessions to generate ideas. Since this approach talks about being entirely subjective and not just using subjective elements in an overall context, it is usually viewed with skepticism and not considered entirely reliable for major decision-making processes. It may be useful to get a preliminary view or a rough cut estimates, but final decisions are almost never taken only on this basis. The Delphi technique and scenario drafting methods are a combination of subjective and objective elements. The subjective approach that we discussed just now is clearly just subjective, and the last theoretical approach that we're about to discuss is almost entirely objective. This method is called time series forecasting. Time series forecasting is a quantitative forecasting technique that analyzes historical data over time to identify trends. Various intervals of data may be analyzed. This could be annual, quarterly, seasonal, cyclical, etc. This is a scientific method and provides empirical basis for forecasting. Using time series forecasting, there are various metrics used to analyze data, like moving averages, central tendency, etc. A proven track record of performance can help validate forecasts, since certain patterns repeat themselves periodically, whether it's every month, quarter, or year. It's just a matter of identifying the pattern and applying it to arrive at forecasts. While these are broadly the academic approaches, there are several other causal models, econometric models, and statistical techniques and models that help with forecasting and are indeed used by various organizations that need to provide highly accurate data, such as weather forecasting agencies, insurance companies, and some other specialized industries. But they do not fall squarely in the scope of financial analysis, and hence we will leave them out of this discussion. From a modeling perspective, a combination of various time series approaches and scenarios are used to arrive at various possible solutions and outcomes. Now that we have seen the theoretical approaches, we will move on to some practical approaches applied in forecasting. There are primarily four practical approaches to forecasting: extrapolation, proportion analysis, the top-down approach, and the bottom-up approach. However, it is important to note that these approaches are usually not applied in isolation. They are usually used cohesively and in various combinations to arrive at meaningful and reliable estimates. Let's begin with extrapolation. Extrapolation is one of the commonly used practical approaches to forecasting. It involves estimating future values for a particular variable by applying a growth percentage to its value in a prior period. The growth could be linear or non-linear, staggered or constant, positive or negative. By linear, we mean it would be constant from period to period, such as 5% growth every year. In contrast, when we say staggered, we imply that the growth follows a certain pattern, such as 5% every 3 years. When we say non-linear, we mean that the growth assumption has some basis, such as 5% in year 1, 2% in year 3, and 1% thereafter. Or for instance, a 5% increase in maintenance cost every time a new equipment is added. Extrapolation attempts to predict future data by relying on historical data, such as estimating the size of a population a few years from now on the basis of the current population size and its rate of growth. Extrapolation may be valid where the present circumstances do not indicate any interruption in the long established past trends, or there is enough data available to prove that trends going forward will differ from the past in an identified manner and due to valid reasons. Let's take an example. A pizza manufacturer may estimate his sales for the next 3 years to decrease steadily because a direct competitor with more options and cheaper prices has set up shop right opposite his outlet. In this case, the past trend is not likely to continue, but there is some basis to assume a decline. While colloquially the words projection and forecast are used interchangeably, in the strictest sense, some people may use the word projection only when data has been directly extrapolated without any other complementing calculation or analysis. Continuing on with some more examples, in this table, let's assume x is the dependent variable and y% is the growth rate. For the first period, which is actually period 0 here, we have the value of x to be 100. This may be rupees 100 crores or USD 100 million, but let us ignore units for the purpose of these examples. Let us further see how the values change at revenue growth and degrowth assumptions of 5%. In period 1, the value x is calculated as x into 1 plus y%, which gives us 105 in the growth case and 95 in the degrowth case. Similarly, in the next period, when the rates are applied, the revenue grows by 11 and degrows by 9, since 5% of 105 is more than 5% of 9. So on and so forth in subsequent periods. The revenue at 5% growth keeps increasing at a constant rate every period, while the revenue at 5% degrowth keeps decreasing. The percentage assumption can be different across each period or across some of the periods or follow a trend like we discussed earlier. In this case, you would require separate inputs for each period. But the fundamental principle of extrapolation is applying a percentage increase or decrease to a historical period comparable number. This approach is usually used for items that are independent variables and can't be expressed as a proportion of or on the basis of another item. Growth rates are usually based on some underlying premise to which they are linked. The most commonly used basis for estimating growth rates are overall growth rate of the economy, the historical growth rate for the entity, and known factors expected to contribute to forecast performance. When considering the overall growth rate of the economy or the industry, the assumption may be that the growth rate either mirrors the overall growth rate or leads or lags it by a particular margin. For instance, if the economy is growing at 5%, one may assume that the industry and company we are evaluating will also grow at similar rates. Alternatively, if there is reason to believe that it will grow faster or slower than the economy, such assumptions may be made with suitable backup data to validate them. The future trends for the economic or industry metrics such as WPI, CPI, industrial production, economic growth, GDP, exchange rate, all of these are usually based on publicly available data. The second likely basis for growth rate estimation could be the observed historical growth rate for the entity or the project. Again, the projected growth rate may be equal, higher or lower than this rate based on specific case-to-case analysis. Lastly, any known factors expected to contribute to forecast performance, example order book, new business or new product, would form an automatic basis for the growth rate and would in fact support any higher or lower rate assumed based on the earlier criteria discussed. That is, if we are assuming a higher growth rate than the industry average or the company's own historical average, that would likely be based on such known factors. Moving on, proportion analysis refers to estimating future values for a particular variable based on its proportion or percentage of a larger variable in the known period. This is useful when there is a clear defined relationship between two items, such as sales and margins, or even when total sales has to be bifurcated between various products. This approach is most preferred for items that are dependent on other independent parameters. Often in such cases of dependency, this is the only logical way of modeling the dependent variable. The proportion could be constant over time or variable or staggered, just as we saw for extrapolation. The proportions can vary over time, necessitating a separate input for such periods. Moving on to an example on proportion analysis. Again, let us consider x as dependent variable and y as the independent variable. In this case, let us assume that from past experience and research, we know that x is always equal to z percentage of y. For clear understanding, let's take y to be revenues and x to be profit. By that definition, z would refer to the profit margin. In the table, there are two rows. Y or revenue at 5% growth, and X or profit at Z%, that is 10% of revenue. The first row shows X to be 100 at time period 0 and increasing by 5% each year to 208 in time period 5. The second row shows the profits as 10% of revenues in each period, thereby giving a result of 10 in period 0 and 20.8 rounded off to 21 in period 5. The equation X is equal to Z percentage of Y is constant throughout the columns. Again, Z% is a variable and can change over time, necessitating separate inputs. Proportion analysis is used in multiple ways. For instance, profits for various levels such as gross profit margin, EBITDA margin, etc. For variable costs as percentage of revenue or percentage of cost of goods sold or as cost per unit of product sold, etc. And classification of operating segments or for contribution analysis or for various other purposes. Finally, when percentages are used to classify a variable into its separate elements, adequate checks should be in place to ensure such percentage inputs always add up to 100%. Now, the first two approaches that we just discussed were actually methods, that is more formulaic. The next two approaches are more fundamental in nature, that is, they come in at the planning stage of the model rather than the execution stage. Let's begin with the top-down approach. The top-down approach is usually used for simple forecasts based on high-level assumptions. The key items are forecast and their underlying inputs are validated to support the above calculations. It may result in an iterative process of fine-tuning inputs to adequately justify forecasts. For example, one may project sales to grow at a certain rate and then validate the resultant sales figures by checking if a reasonable change in price and volumes supports these numbers. Further, the top-down approach, when applied in detail, is usually based on macro-level assumptions. For example, a company that operates hotels would like to look at the population of the country, analyze the demographics in terms of what proportion prefers adventure travel over relaxing holidays, for instance. What is the average number of days that these people take holidays during the year? Typically during which season? And what is the proportion of this population that can afford to holiday at the company's properties? So on and so forth. On this basis, it would arrive at an addressable customer base, on the basis of which it can estimate revenues for its various resorts. The top-down approach does not start by looking at the hotel operator's capacity, but by looking at the addressable market. The expansion plans and target penetration are then worked out on this basis. These need to be validated manually every time the macro assumptions change. The eventual outcome of most financial models is a set of integrated financial statements. That is the income statement, balance sheet and cash flow statement, and some key ratios, metrics and valuation parameters. To achieve this in the top-down approach, first high-level items are estimated, such as revenues and margins, on the basis of which planned capital expenditures and working capital items are then forecast. Thereafter, underlying items are assessed off the model to ensure they can justify the projections. If required, the projections are tweaked to reflect the outcome of such evaluation. Here are a few examples to help you understand better. In case of revenues, volumes and prices are not modeled separately. Revenue may simply be grown on a broad basis, for example, considering expected growth in consumption and estimated proportionate spend on the product. These would then have to be backed up by checking the entity's capacity to generate those volumes and ability to sell at the prices required to achieve those revenue targets. Further, individual segments may not be forecast separately and overall consolidated forecasts may be prepared. Whereas for margins, manufacturing or service delivery costs and operating costs may not be separately evaluated. For instance, if the company is planning on adding several new employees, the margin squeeze may simply be captured by using a decreasing assumption for margins in the relevant periods. The outcome of known future events is captured by way of their expected impact on major line items affecting analysis. In the top-down approach, CapEx or capital expenditure is roughly estimated and depreciation may be modeled on a straightforward basis as percentage of assets instead of setting up detailed calculations for various possible depreciation methods, bases, and asset classes. Blended assumptions may be used for various items. For example, an overall assumption for net working capital as days of sales may be considered instead of drilling down individual working capital items. In conclusion, owing to its high-level nature, the top-down approach is usually not applied in isolation when preparing financial models for decision-making. It needs to be heavily backed up by supporting arguments and valid assumptions. Setting up models based on this approach requires repeated validation and iteration based on underlying inputs, which may be off the model or not available in a structured form at all, making the model less dynamic and reducing its utility. While these models serve as simplistic representations, they do not render themselves amenable to detailed analysis and stress testing of inputs. Finally, we have the fourth approach, which is the bottom-up approach. In this method, underlying inputs at basest entity level are forecast and then built up to arrive at key items. This method involves very detailed driver analysis at entity level to capture cause-effect relationships adequately in the model. It is more empirical and dynamic because as soon as an underlying input changes, the output reflects it. Taking the earlier example of the hotel operator ahead, if instead of using the top-down approach, we apply the bottom-up approach, we would first identify the number of rooms of various types that he operates at various locations based on historic data for what proportion of the year are the properties fully occupied, how it has changed from period to period, what were the revenues per room in the previous year, what level of growth in room rentals is feasible, how much capital expenditure does it incur for every additional room, what is it currently doing to attract more customers, and how is this expected to contribute to customer growth in the years to come. We will be learning more about the bottom-up approach in the next series of videos. So we will wrap this up here for now. So to sum up, let's examine the key difference between the two approaches. When using the top-down approach, we start by looking at external factors first, whereas in the bottom approach, we start by assessing the factors internal to the entity. Unlike the top-down approach, where every time the macro assumption changes, we need to manually check for validity of the underlying entity level inputs, in the bottom-up approach, this check is automatic since our basic premise is more inward-looking. Some items may use the basic top-down model of high-level assumptions to project these figures and then validate them, whereas bottom-up approach may be used for items intrinsic and niche to the company, where broad-based trends may not be available or applicable to the company. It should also be highlighted that it is really not possible to use these two approaches in isolation. Any model is a combination of top-down and bottom-up approaches, and some items are extrapolated, others are projected based on their proportionate or other relationship with some other item in the model. That's it for now. We hope you found this session on forecasting methods useful.